Good evening. I'm Emily Walker with the United States Embassy in Algiers, and this is Let's Chat, a program hosted by the American Cultural Center Algiers. The U.S. Embassy also has 4 other cultural centers around Algeria. There's one in Constantine, Oran, Bashar, and Wergela. Most of them are closed right now because of COVID, but when they reopen, I really encourage you to go and check out these cultural centers. They're a great place to practice your English, and they are a great place to hear talks like the one you're going to hear today. So today we're going to talk about volunteering in America. Volunteering is an important part of American culture, especially at religious institutions like mosques, churches, synagogues, and temples. And it's also very important for high school students and college students. Today, my guest is Mimi Bunar. Mimi's a freshman at Boston University, where she's studying biomedical engineering on a pre-health track. She started a Muslim student association at her high school, and she volunteers with a number of other organizations now. So she's going to talk to us about that. She's also Algerian-American. Mimi, welcome so much to the program. Welcome. How are you?
Thank you, Emily. Thank you. I'm doing well. How are you?
Great. Thanks. Thanks so much for joining us. I wondered if we could start by talking about your connection to Algeria.
Yes. So I'm going to share my presentation real quick. Can you see that?
I can.
All right. So as Emily mentioned, today we're going to be talking about volunteerism in the United States. And one second. There we go. This is just a bit of an overview of our talk today. So I'm going to do an introduction, talk about what is volunteerism, my high school career, the college application process, Boston University, and how you can get started with volunteering in your community. All right, so hi, I'm Mimi, as Emily mentioned. My parents are both from Tizi in Algeria. They both came to the United States through the diversity visa program, and I was actually born in the United States, but we go to Algeria every summer to visit my family in Tizi and I actually learned Darja and a little bit of Amazigh and French when I was in Algeria. I'm currently a student at Boston University studying biomedical engineering on the pre-health track. I'm still not sure. I was thinking of pre-dental, but I'm also thinking about pre-medical. So that's why I just say pre-health, because inshallah, one day I'll be able to decide. And I'm very passionate about giving back to our communities and helping others. All right, so the definition of volunteerism. Volunteering.
Thank you for a second, because a lot of people who are watching the YouTube stream, as you know, since you come to Algeria every year, English is their maybe 3rd language. So I know English is your first language, but if we could just kind of go a bit slower so everybody could follow along.
Sorry about that. All right. So the definition of volunteering is, as Merriam-Webster Dictionary says, it's a voluntary act of an individual or group freely giving time and labor for community services. And I really want to emphasize the point of group, because for me, most of my volunteering experiences were with groups. And I find that when you work with a group, you're open to more identities, more cultures, more experiences and everything. So from that, you can have a better overall working experience, because you have so many new different ideas coming in, and it just helps you overall. Some examples of volunteering: helping the elderly, teaching children, giving time to those in need in general. And that's a really important part, giving your time. It definitely takes a lot of time and patience and determination to volunteer. So that's one of the key points, which is why it can be hard for many, but it's still very important. And the importance of volunteering in general, it helps others and it allows you to give back to your community and make yourself feel a little bit better, because you are able to make an impact on your community and make a difference to help each other. So that's a little bit about volunteering. Now we're going to talk about my high school career and my high school experience. Because as I mentioned, I'm currently a freshman at Boston University, so I just got out of high school. So I have a lot of experience from what I did in high school. So what you'll notice is I have STEM organizations and cultural organizations. So for me, I'm very interested in STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, math. And I'm also very interested in culture, given that I am Algerian-American, Muslim, and a first-generation immigrant. So because of that, I decided to get involved in a couple of clubs and I started 5 clubs at my high school that related to these subjects. So first we'll start with the STEM organizations. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is Girls in Science.
Miriam, could I just interject and ask, you started these organizations that didn't exist before in your high school. Did you start them because they didn't exist and you wanted other people to know about it? What was the motivation? Maybe it was also because you knew you would be applying to colleges and it looks good on your application to colleges to be doing volunteer organizations. Could you talk about why you wanted to start these organizations and then get into them?
Yes, for sure. So with each of the ones, there's kind of a different reason as to why I wanted to start it. So for example, with the Girls in Science, I really wanted to start it because a couple of friends and we noticed that we were taking a computer programming class, and we noticed that there were maybe 5 girls in the class of 20 people. And we were kind of thinking, why is it that there aren't that many girls in this class? It's not really fair. And then we figured out that it's because of the lack of the male dominance in the STEM fields. So we really want to help combat that and encourage girls, and younger girls especially, to pursue a career in the science field. And so to do that, we wanted to help build and instill confidence in younger girls so that they can become more comfortable with the STEM field so that they can go on and work in that later on. So with Girls in Science, that was kind of the motivation. We wanted to help girls so that they could become more confident, develop key skills, and just learn more. So I'll get a little into Girls in Science and then I'll talk about the other ones afterwards. Girls in Science is a club where high school girls help younger girls from age around 11 to 13, and the high schoolers are usually from the age like 16 to 18. So basically the older girls would be paired up with the younger girls and help them with a science project for the whole entire year, doing whatever type of project they wanted. Some people did gardening, some people did biology, chemistry projects. And then in addition to this year-long project, we would also have various smaller experiments for all of the girls so that they could just get some skills and develop that confidence that I was talking about earlier, just so they can become more comfortable with what they're doing in the science field. And then this project, one thing that I really like about it, even though I left the high school, it is still going on. And that's one of the really important aspects of volunteering. You want to make sure it continues even after you leave. You want to leave a long-lasting impact. So this one, it's still going on. The girls are still researching their projects and still making an impact. And some of the younger girls actually joined the club as the older mentors later on when they got into high school, which is a great opportunity. So for Team Public Health, the reason why I created that club was just to spread general awareness about health issues regarding to any various topic in the science field. So this one, in Girls in Science, we focused on people who like science, and in Team Public Health, our target was essentially everyone in the community. We wanted to help everyone. So for this one, we would just have a monthly issue on various topics that focus on the science field. So whether it be climate change, water quality, when COVID-19 started, we had an issue on COVID-19. And we also did one about the effects of e-cigarettes on our generation. And one of the nice things about Team Public Health is to spread this awareness, we would create a paper or an issue that was just 1 page long, very short, straight to facts, so that it could be easily accessible to anyone who wanted to read them. And we call them stall seat journals because we would place them in the stalls of the restrooms. Yeah, so it was really nice. And a lot of people at first, it was kind of weird.
They can just read a real quick summary of a public health issue that you guys wanted them to know about while they're using the restroom. That's a good marketing idea.
Exactly. And at first, everyone was a little unsure about it, but later on they got used to it. And then they would come up to me and be like, Mimi, when is Team Public Health coming up with the next issue? I want to read it. I want to read it. So it's really nice. And like even adding the fun facts, it was a great opportunity. So that sums up my STEM organizations I want to focus on for today. Another one was Girls Who Code, but that's kind of similar to Girls in Science. So now I'm going to focus on the cultural organizations. So as I mentioned, culture definitely plays a big role in my life. And as you can see, if you want to talk about the college application process, they look for you to be well-rounded. So they don't want, if you like science, that's great. Do something in science, but don't just focus on science. Focus on culture, focus on language, focus on any other thing, just so it shows that you can do multiple things, not just science or STEM. So for the cultural organization, the first club that I started was the Muslim Students Association. So this one, the need for this came when I realized that we had a lot of Muslims in our community, but the Muslims did not know each other because we were different ages, different grades and everything. So we never really got to meet with each other. And it was kind of hard being a Muslim by yourself in a really in a non-Muslim area, I guess you could say. So from that, we created the club, the Muslim Students Association, and the school was very, very happy and very excited to have it. So we didn't have any hardships creating it. And then
ask, how many other Muslim students were there at your high school?
So first off, when I was a freshman and I started the club, we had only 4 Muslims in the club. And right now there are currently 30 members in the club. There are still, yes, currently. There's still a lot of other Muslims who aren't in the club, but they are definitely aware about it. So it's just an open opportunity for anyone to join if they would like. And so we accomplished 3 things when I was there as a member. The first thing we did was we got a prayer room for anyone, for Salat, for all the Muslims and anyone, even if you weren't in the club. So after school, because of extracurriculars, not many people can go home and pray right away. You have to stay after school and do your clubs. So people could pray right after school, do Salat, pray the whole Asr, and then go to their clubs. And then so that was the first thing we did. The second thing, we got a room for Jamu'ah. So every Friday we would have a Jamu'ah prayer. And one of the members of the club would give a khutbah and lead the prayer. And all the students and Muslims in our community were able to come to join in with that. And the last thing we did while I was there was we got Eid al-Adha and Eid al-Fitr both onto the school calendar, and this was definitely a big step because a lot of other religious holidays are on school calendars, but Eid al-Adha and Eid al-Fitr and Ramadan are not on school calendars. So if you are absent, if you have tests, if you are just not feeling too well because you're tired because of Ramadan, your teachers don't know that. But because of this, we were able to spread awareness about what was going on and help the community understand what it's like to be a Muslim, especially on these important days, which is why it's really awesome to have that.
It is. That's a really big accomplishment. I mean, for people watching in the United States, there's a lot of, even if people aren't religious, there's a lot of Christian holidays that everyone at school knows about. Everyone knows about it. So to actually have a Muslim holiday on it's a public high school you attended, I'm sure, a public high school, to have that on your public high school calendar, I think that's a pretty big accomplishment from your organization.
It was awesome. It's a great achievement. And from that, because of my efforts in the Muslim Students Association, I was asked to attend a conference with a couple other students. It was a cultural related conference. And after that conference, we gained a lot of leadership skills and whatnot, and we learned a lot more about the people around us. And we were asked by our administration if we want to continue anything. And this was a great example of how to start volunteering in your community. From that one event that we went to as a group, we decided to create the Cultural Council, which is a council of students, a group of students that work to spread awareness in our high school community, because our community was very, very diverse. And our administration, they did a great job tackling the diversity and spreading awareness. However, as students, we saw that they tackled it in a very broad manner, and they were going kind of too out there, and it wasn't working with the students because they couldn't relate. So what we did was we created to be more specific to our community. So we made a series of YouTube videos about students in our community, whether it be about immigration, cultural identity, race, ethnicity, and also immigration. We did all those topics, and we had many others as well, where we interviewed students from our school and asked them various topics and about their experience as well. And then from that, students in the high school were able to relate to the videos and understand like this makes sense now because I see this person, they go through the same thing as me and they identify a little bit differently or similarly to me, so it makes sense, and we can grow as a community from that and learn more about the other individuals who are with us. Mm-hmm. So that was the Cultural Council and what was our main goal. And actually from that, I was asked to serve on a student panel for a teacher staff professional development day. So professional development days are basically where the students do not have school and the teachers and staff go to learn about various topics. And on that day, they were working on cultural diversity and spreading awareness about the diversity of our community as a high school. Mm-hmm. So I basically served as a student panelist, and I talked about my experience as a Muslim, as a first-generation immigrant, as an Algerian, and many other identities that I have in our school community and how it has felt and how we can improve and how teachers can learn just from our experiences, how they can become more welcoming to other identities. Mm-hmm.
Great, Mimi. I want to continue with this, and this is very impressive. And all of our folks who are watching on YouTube are very impressed with how many organizations you started and everything that you do. But they would also like to know a little bit more about you, if you're okay with that. Lena Lou asked, did you live in Algeria when you were in high school, or what is your experience with Algeria? I know you mentioned that your parents are from Tizi Ouzou and that they were recipients of the diversity visa program. But could you do a little interjection and talk about, I know you came to Algeria every summer, and could you talk a little bit about your experience coming to Algeria every year?
Yeah, so I actually lived in Algeria for a year in 2010. I lived there for the whole school year, and I went to the public schools there. Then I switched out, and then I did a bit of homeschooling just so I could keep up with my education here. I did not actually attend high school in Algeria, but I was able to go, because every year when I do go in the summer, I spend around a month, 2 months there, and I just get to see my family, go around and see what's going on and learn more about my culture and people around us and whatnot. So it was definitely a great opportunity, and it helped me learn more about my identity as an Algerian as well when I go back and visit, and also see how I can help and make a difference given my experience in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel when you visit Algeria, does it feel like home? Do you feel like you fit in? I mean, I'm sure you have a lot of family who still lives here. What does it feel like when you visit every summer?
It definitely was hard at first when I was younger because I did not speak Arabic. So it's definitely harder to fit in. But as the years go on and I start to learn more about the Algerian culture, more about myself, and learn the language as well, I start to fit in more, I guess you could say. And it kind of feels like a home. I always miss it. Every time I leave, I'm like in tears. I want to go back. And this year was definitely really hard with COVID-19 and not being able to go to Algeria, but I'm looking forward to potentially going back soon.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, so you were talking about other organizations that you started in high school.
So the last one is the Boston X Tizi Ouzou students. This was one that I just started last year as a senior in my last year of high school. This one unfortunately did get cut short due to COVID-19. But what we are planning on doing is working with students from high schools in Algeria. And I actually got partnered up with some people who were working in schools and have connections in Algeria with Malik Brahimat and Munia Boutaji. Both of them definitely helped me out. And we were trying to get it so that students in Tizi Ouzou could learn English in a way that they could just talk to people like we're talking right now. So they could have more experience and become more comfortable talking in English and typing in English, texting English, and all that stuff, so that if they were to pursue anything outside of Algeria, and they would have those skills in English and be able to communicate in a sense. But that definitely did cut short because of COVID-19. So I'm looking forward to picking that up as soon as possible.
Why did you want to make a connection between students in Boston and students in Tizi Ouzou?
Because definitely, as I mentioned before with volunteering, it takes a group to do anything, in my opinion. And so if we paired up Boston students with students in Tizi Ouzou, that would open up not only the Boston students, but the students in Tizi Ouzou to a whole nother world, a whole nother identity, a whole nother culture. And it would just broaden their experiences and their horizon, and it would definitely benefit them in the long term just from learning in that experience. All right. So next we have the college application process. So as we mentioned earlier, college application is definitely different from the way it is in Algeria. We don't have a buck per se. It's just they look at your whole entire high school experience from freshman to senior, 4 years, all four. They look at not only your grades, but what else did you do? Did you make an impact? Did you volunteer? Did you have a leadership role or anything like that? Because these colleges, they know that students are smart. They see the grades, they see the notes, but they want to know, are you going to be the next president? Are you going to be the next Nobel Peace Prize winner? Are you going to make an impact and have a legacy for our university? So they want the next leaders of the nation and the world. So that's definitely why they look at not just your grades, but your extracurriculars, your activities. How are you engaging in your community? So with that, it's really important to look at what you want to do. You don't have to decide in the United States before, but it is helpful if you know what you want to do. For example, I knew that I wanted to go into the field of STEM, science, technology, engineering, math. So I applied to colleges that were specifically in the math field or the science field because I was like, I know that I want to do this. There are also liberal arts schools that focus on the arts, so English, history, politics, and whatnot. If you are more interested in that, you can apply to that type of school. So with that, there's a lot of more opportunities if you know exactly what you want to do. But if not, that is definitely okay. As you can see, Boston University, there's so many majors, so many opportunities to learn different things. So a lot of people who aren't sure, they might go to a bigger school like Boston University and learn more. You can mix your majors as well. Like I have a couple of people who are doing science with a politics aspect to it, and they mix it together. And that is definitely possible at larger universities. And there's also the idea of public universities versus private universities, which is a little bit over it here. And that is essentially it for the high school and college application process. As I mentioned, it's very important to not just focus on your grades, but also what are you doing outside of school?
Miriam, can I interject again for a personal question, but it very much relates to this because you were saying that you knew you wanted to study STEM. You knew you wanted to do these things. So it's a question about your dreams. This question comes from Sumaya Yu from YouTube. And she says, how does your culture and religion shape your personal dreams and aspirations?
So that definitely played an important role because I've always kind of wanted to give back, and especially in Islam, you see it, a very important foundation of Islam is giving back and helping people, which is why I don't want to just be an engineer, but I also want to go into the aspect of the health and be able to give back to people. I've always wanted to travel the world and help people in less fortunate countries. So there's the very well-known Doctors Without Borders and Dentists Without Borders. And I've always wanted to be in one of those things. It's just definitely been impacted by my culture and religion because the idea of giving back has always been inside of me. And when I'm not giving back, I feel a bit weird. I'm like, no, I want to go help someone. I really need to help someone or else I feel not at ease, if that makes sense.
Okay, thanks. Continue.
Okay. So a bit why I chose BU. The research opportunities at Boston University are endless. There's so many in any field, not just science, technology, and engineering, but in every field that you can see. Also the idea of community and diversity. As I mentioned, my high school was pretty diverse, but it always can improve. It always can be more diverse. And if you see, Boston University is an international school. You don't just have Americans at this school. You have people from all around the world, from all the continents, coming and studying and learning. And as I mentioned before, groups are the most important thing because if people are coming from an international world, you can learn about their experience and they might have had something in their life that you don't know about. You never had to deal with that. And you can learn from that and grow as an individual and make a bigger impact with that knowledge. As for my career choice, Boston University is very well known for their biomedical engineering as well as their health. They have an amazing dental and medical school. So inshallah, I will be applying to those and hopefully all goes well. It's also very close to home. It's only 45 minutes from me, so it's pretty convenient. And scholarships. Boston University offered me a couple scholarships, and this ties back to the volunteering because in the United States, in terms of scholarships, you can go online and search for scholarships on anything, but the biggest field, I guess, that you will find of scholarships is volunteering and leadership. If you are volunteering and you have leadership skills, you're more likely to get a scholarship because you're making an impact and a difference, and you're trying to change the world for the better.
That's a great point, Mimi. I just want to highlight that for everyone watching, that scholarships, applying to college in the United States is a long and complicated process. But after you get into a specific university, that's when you look for scholarships. And scholarships could be provided by the university, or they could just be provided by an outside organization. So what Mimi is saying, that, you know, because of her volunteering work in high school, it opened up a lot of other scholarships for her, maybe from specific organizations that wanted to give money to attend college for someone who volunteered a lot in high school. So that's a interesting point.
Exactly. Yeah. So this one is just a couple steps and tips on how you guys can get started in your communities. So like I mentioned before.
Sorry to interject again. I'm glad you're doing this slide because a lot of people on YouTube have been asking that, specifically how they can find an organization to volunteer with, specifically how they can find a STEM organization, how you get started. So this is good.
One thing I will say is look in your communities, ask teachers, ask professors, anyone that you know who is related to the science field or STEM field, ask them if they are aware of anything, because that's how I started out. And I joined a couple of science clubs because of that. If there isn't anything though, don't let that stop you. You can go and build the organization by yourself. Don't say, oh, no one created it, I can't join anything, I can't do it now. You can go and create it, and you can start a group and become a big organization from that. It just takes a little extra steps, but it's definitely worth it in the long run. So one thing to look out first is what can improve in your community. You can see something specific that you enjoy. Like, for example, I like science, and I saw that there weren't that many girls in my science class. So I improved it through that, and I also have a joy for science. So combining those two, seeing what can improve and what do you like, is definitely helpful, because you want to enjoy what you're doing. You don't want to do it just to do it. You want to have a reason to go back and help them all the time. So that's definitely the first step. And then who can help? As I've been talking about, groups are the biggest thing for me, because you get more identities, more ideas, more experiences. And so by knowing what can improve, what your first step is, create a group, start a team, and bring new ideas and perspectives, and start from there. And then make a list of steps of what you want to do to accomplish this task. For example, if you want to build a well in your community, why do you need a well? Who's going to have access to the well? How can we communicate to our community that we're going to be building this and you guys can use it? So it's definitely different steps of that, and it depends on the task. It's different for every single project out there, which is why you have to take the time, work as a team, figure out what you like, how you can help, and start small. It does not have to be something extremely big. It can be something super, super small, and you can go from there. And then afterwards, you can build a community. As I mentioned, the job is never done. Especially with volunteering, you want to make a long-lasting impact. How is this going to be working in 10 years? Is it still going to be there? Is it going to improve and keep changing with time and make better improvements so that it can be accessible to everyone? So keep asking yourself these questions, saying how, why, how can I do this? How can I make it better? And that definitely will help you guide yourself on the long-term aspect.
Amy, is there any tip you have for how can you tell if it's going to be lasting? For instance, if somebody started a project, but they were going to move away after something, how can they make sure that what they did isn't going to all disappear?
So for that, I definitely, again, would encourage you to have a team, have a group of people that you also know are interested in it. And even if the whole team is going to be leaving, if you had other members, for example, other younger members of the club who were learning about that material or subject or whatever you were working on, if they are part of it, they can then take the leadership afterwards. After you leave, another generation can come in and take your spot and help continue for that that organization to grow.
Mm-hmm. So always be training new people. That's a good tip.
Always bring in new generations, younger generations, new people. It helps for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I will leave you all with this quote: one of the greatest gifts that you can give is your time. So thank you all for your time and coming and listening. I hope you learned a bit, and thank you, everyone. Any questions?
Thank you, Mimi. That was inspiring, and I'm quoting from people on YouTube. Found that very inspiring. They're very impressed with how much you do. We'll say that. There's a question on here from Abdulkader Bukela, who wants to know, how do you deal with cultural differences in your daily life? And maybe you can also address cultural differences and cultural considerations when you're starting a volunteer project.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely difficult at first, especially in the United States, because there's so many cultures coming at once. So it can be a bit hard at first. I'm not going to lie and say everything is easy, but you just have to learn, and you have to talk to people about it and express if something in the group is against your culture or something like that. You just have to mention it to the group and say, hey, I don't feel very comfortable with this. Is it okay if we shift gears like that? And because you can't assume that everyone else knows what your culture is. They don't know the rules, they don't know the boundaries and whatnot. So you just have to keep informing everyone. And also with that, you're going to learn more about the cultures around you, which is another reason why I love working with groups. People from different cultures have different roles, have different things that they do and don't do. And so you're going to learn from that. And then maybe the next time you work with someone who had the same culture as the last person, you're more aware. So you know how to welcome them and make them feel more comfortable in the environment.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for that. So what about if you were doing a volunteer project and you know, there's just so many cultural considerations when you're working with different groups. I'm thinking here in Algeria, if somebody were to start some sort of project and they run into some sort of barrier, you know, the same cultural considerations that exist in the United States don't necessarily exist in Algeria. So when you're doing a volunteer project, how do you kind of assess if what you're doing is culturally appropriate and is fitting the needs of the people that you're trying to serve?
That's a great question. So definitely, I think reaching out and asking people who have had experience with that culture, the outside culture that you're thinking about, and asking if it's okay, because you're not expected to know everything right off the bat. You may make a mistake like that. So asking people around you for advice, for help, and even if you didn't have a group of people, you could just start out and try to see if that project works. After a couple of weeks, you might get a couple of people inputting some information to you, giving you feedback and saying, hey, I think this isn't okay, or this isn't okay. And listening to that feedback in the early stages is definitely going to benefit you in the long term, because that can help you grow and change that right off the bat, instead of waiting until like a year later and it's already a bigger problem. So changing it from the beginning is definitely a great idea. So getting input from outsiders, whether it be people who are already familiar with that culture or after starting it, and getting input from the people who are partaking and involved in that activity.
Mm-hmm. And probably being open to actually changing it, because if you think you had an excellent idea and someone tells you, well, I actually think we should do it this way, that can be hard to back off from your idea and go in a different direction.
Yes, for sure. And even if you aren't completely sure about the other person's suggestion, finding a middle ground and coming to a consensus between you and the other person, trying to meet in the middle to agree, is definitely going to help, because it might not go fully away from your idea. It can still incorporate some aspects of what you were thinking of originally.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks for that response. And if you wouldn't mind, stop sharing your screen there. It's a lovely quote and a lovely picture, but we'll look at your face now for the next few minutes. This question comes in from May on YouTube, and she wants to know if you faced any particular obstacles from being a woman.
For sure. That is, especially in the field of science and technology and engineering math, that is a big aspect. From a young age, honestly, you see it even when you're working in groups. I'm currently taking an engineering course, and when I'm in labs, like I just had a lab today, you're put in a smaller group, and it's majority are all males. And if you ask a question, they tend to just brush it off, ignore you. And then you notice if another male asks a question, they all respond, they're talking about it. You're like, okay, this is interesting. Why is that? So I feel like definitely a piece of
every day of life. I can relate to that, and I'm sure a lot of women can. But
it's so hard, and it definitely like it hurts you a lot because you're like, what am I doing wrong? But you're not. It's not you at all. So you just have to keep fighting, and you just have to just completely ignore them. And definitely, especially all across the United States and the universities, they have programs for women in STEM. So I encourage you, if you want to research more about that, like the Girls in Science program that I spoke about, they have clubs and activities specific for women in the field of STEM to help build a community. You can have mentors and mentees because you don't have to always go turn to those guys in your lab group to ask a question and get ignored. You can go to these other people who also are women, and they will definitely help you out gladly.
Yeah, that's a great point. And for people watching on YouTube who are in Algeria, we also have some STEM programs for women, specifically for high school girls and college women that we're launching at our American spaces soon. So that's going to be at every American space in Bashar, Wergla, Constantine, Oran, and Algiers. So stay tuned. So that's a good way to get involved also. Let's see what other questions we have coming in here. There's a couple questions wondering whether you speak Arabic.
I do. I speak Darja. I actually, another opportunity that I'm doing right now, it's called ILP. It's my work study program. So in the United States, when you're in college, you can get money by working for the school, essentially. And I'm currently tutoring people in a low-income community in Massachusetts, and they speak mainly Arabic. So I have one Moroccan, one Tunisian, one Algerian, and one Libyan. And so I help them learn English, and they mostly speak Arabic. So I communicate with them sometimes in Darja to help them understand the projects and activities that we're doing in English. But yes, I learned Darja in 2010. I didn't speak Darja before. I learned it in 2010 when I lived there for a year. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to communicate. And from there, I just continued to learn languages.
But your parents speak Darija, being from Tizi Ouzou. Yes. But did they make it a point after they moved to the US to only speak to you in English, or?
So with my older sister, because she came with them, they spoke mostly Darja with her, and then they started to learn English as she learned English. They tried to speak Darja with me and a little bit of Amazigh as well when I was growing up, but it didn't really sink in until I was fully immersed in the culture. In Algeria, which is another great tip. If you want to learn a language, you need to be fully immersed, watch TV, listen to music, do anything that you can to learn that language, because once you're practicing it a lot, it's definitely going to sink into your head more easily.
Yeah, that's a good tip. Okay, we have a question that just came in from Sumaya Yu, who's really just asking some very interesting questions. I'm enjoying all of her questions here, I have to say. She wants to know, how do you practice self-care and make sure that you don't burn out? Because you do a lot. You seem very busy. So how do you practice self-care?
I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I do burn out. I have what we call mental breakdowns a couple times a month, but it's okay, you get used to it. One thing I definitely suggest is time management and figuring out your schedule. If you know you have an exam next Monday and you also have a meeting for your club on that Monday, talk to your club. Talk to the vice president, if you're the president, talk to the vice president and the other members and say, hey, I really can't come to say I have an exam, I have a final. Is it okay if you take over my responsibilities for that day? So communication and also time management definitely play a big role in how I've been able to balance myself in a sense. But sometimes it's not going to work out. Sometimes you're just going to be stuck there. You're like, I can't do this. I have too much on my plate. And that's definitely okay. Because with each time that happens, you can go back and think, what did I do wrong? What was I not managing my time with? Did I focus on this instead of this? And just reevaluating how you came about that and approached it will definitely help you with the next time.
I think that's really good advice. I mean, I often think that I can do more than I'm actually capable of, more than there are hours in the day. And then at the last moment, I'll have to tell people I can't do it. but it would be much more kind to everybody and really to yourself if you could realize that maybe a few days before that you just can't do it and you can ask somebody else to do it. I think that's better for everyone. So that's a good tip about delegating. That's good. So there's a lot of questions coming in on YouTube about how people can get to the US, how people can go to the US to volunteer. Or are there some sort of programs that will pay for them to go to the US to volunteer, which is great. I think volunteering anywhere around the world is great, but I'm wondering if you could address the importance of volunteering in one's own community, if you think that's a particularly important thing.
It is. It's definitely important to start, because what I always like to say is give back to those who help you grow. I've been volunteering at the preschool that I attended for 8 years now, and they are an amazing community, but it's definitely important to give back to where you come from so that it can continue to grow. You are the expert of your community. Only you know your community. Someone from the outside does not know your community. Someone from a different country doesn't know your community. Only you know it. So you're the best person to make that community a better place. So for example, like with my community, I knew about the discrimination that was happening. I knew about the lack of girls in the classes. So that is why I started those specifically for my community. In Algeria, if you see the similar problem, if you see that, for example, I know in my town where my mom is from in Algeria, there's a lot of problems with COVID-19 because there's a large elderly population there and they aren't able to go and get food on a daily basis. So I was talking to some family members. I was like, what if there's a couple of students or younger kids that go and do the shopping for the elderly people and then bring it in, because they are the experts of their community. They know if that is okay, if that's going to work, if it's not going to work and whatnot. So it's definitely, you are the expert of your community. That's what I would say is the most important.
Great. I think that's a very, very good advice. So I think that's about all the time that we have. I'd like to tell everyone watching on YouTube, I saw that there were some questions about the diversity visa program. As Mimi mentioned, her parents won the diversity visa program. They're from Tizi Ouzou and they moved to the Boston area. Khalid recently did, it was last week, he did a talk on the diversity visa program. So that's on our YouTube page. You should subscribe to the YouTube page and you can also find that video. Next week, we're also doing a YouTube Live on Tuesday. We're doing a chat about a really cool program that is for high school graduates to attend American universities in the Middle East. So you should tune in and watch that. There's some good opportunities there. But also, as Mimi beautifully said, you know, look for the thing in your own community that perhaps you can change because you know best what is in your own community. Mimi, you've inspired me too. You've made me feel lazy and I need to go do some more things. No, in a good way though. It's a good inspiration. So thank you so much for all you do. And thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Of course, thank you so much for this great opportunity. It was a pleasure and I've had a great time talking about my experiences and I hope that helped everyone just learn a little bit more about volunteering and experiences with all that. Thank you, everyone.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone for watching. Have a great